Hello everyone, welcome to another Cyber Lounge webinar. This one is a special one. We're talking about the recent Kaseya ransomware attack. I'm joined by Ian Murphy, the founder of CyberOff, Christine Deger, Cyberluchs for Business, and Ayesha Khine from Buildility AB. I'll just hand it over to Ian if he wants to introduce himself. We'll go around.
Yeah, of course. Good morning. Yeah, we're still morning. We may just be airing into afternoon. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. My name's Ian Murphy. I'm the founder of CyberOff. And if you've ever seen me on LinkedIn, I apologize for the language I've used.
Ayesha?
Hi everyone, I'm Ayesha Khine. I'm an IT security manager for Buildility AB. Nice to meet you all and look forward to getting stuck in with this.
And Christine?
Hi, my name is Christine. I'm from Germany/Spain, doing since 4 years as a self-employed person, cybersecurity business, developing companies, help them to make themselves aware of such attacks. And it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Oscar.
It's a pleasure to have you on. So for those of you who don't know, I'm sure we're all aware by now, but just to give a brief overview of the situation, on July the 2nd, a hacker group known as REvil or Revil, don't know how it's pronounced, but they're thought to be Russian-based. They attacked the American headquarters of Kaseya, who are a software company who have their software used by around 40,000 organizations. Now, this has been called the biggest ransomware attack of all time, simply because a lot of these organizations that Kaseya software is used on are MSPs. And so if one MSP is using it, all of their customers may have the ransomware as well. It's big, everything is changing. We're a few weeks removed from that now. So we can kind of give a more overview and a lot of hindsight thoughts on what they could have done better and, how it could have been prevented, etc. So I'm just going to hand it off to Ian, if you'd like to start with his thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Oscar. I think in our industry, it's always difficult, right, when something like this happens, because part of you is empathetic with the people that it's happened to, but also part of you is wiping a bit of sweat off the brow and thinking, thank God that wasn't me, and it's where a lot of us in the industry find ourselves constantly, as well as being asked for comments on it. It's always difficult, and even with the hindsight as well, it really is difficult. When I heard it and when it broke, I think my initial reaction to this was, okay, is it a surprise? I don't think so. If I was an attacker and I wanted to go after a bunch of people, I'd probably try and find a security vendor or security provider that would allow me to get into those networks. And I think one of the big things about this is it's not new. None of this is new. Nothing's new under the sun, as Solomon said eons ago. There is nothing new under the sun in security. This stuff has been about, the supply chain attack has been about for quite some time. We had SolarWinds, and also before that, if you've never heard of it, go and read up on it, an attack called CloudHopper, which used managed security service providers and used them as a hop-off point to all their customers. So I think what it's showing me and what it's telling me is that attackers are clever, not just clever in the way they get in, but clever in choosing their victims to gain maximum effort. And also as well is that I think as an industry, we probably need to get a little bit better at doing what we tell other people to do outside of our industry with trying to protect ourselves.
Yeah, Christine, do you have any thoughts on the situation?
Yes, like Ian said, this is nothing new. I recognize the first ransomware I saw was in 2005. So ransomware exists really, really for a long time. What it makes really bad is that these parts are developing really, really extraordinary to get fast, to hide themselves, to get more tricky and enter the stuff. And I also asked myself, what about as a customer? If you have a customer, you buy some software stuff, isn't it important to prove it yourself before you bring it out in your own network? I know it's difficult because if you get an update from your provider, so you should be safe, you think of, but we see we aren't safe as customers of these softwares. So I thought about discuss more with the companies I deal with about test such things and bring it first into a safe environment and prove it to see if there's malware in it, or before I roll it out in my own infrastructure. So this could be one point where we can help the companies to save themselves before such attacks. That's what I thought spontaneously.
And Ayesha?
Yeah, I agree with both Ian and Christine. I mean, I also think, this is to do with a process issue. And also, I think a lot of companies, they feel with information assurance, it's a tick box exercise. It isn't. We need to do like some more real system testing. We need to understand, so they're using older softwares, some of them, and they're not patching them, obviously. And it's like to be more stringent on getting those patches verified, reviewed, testing them in a dev environment, and then going having that sort of seamless integration there. There's a big divide between sort of service delivery and information security, because infrastructure service delivery don't want the availability to be, they want availability on their systems, but we need to start patching. So we need a better cycle there. And I mean, I think another thing is sort of like end user awareness. Cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. I mean, it can happen to anyone. It doesn't matter what type of company you are. We need to be training everyone and I think that's really important.
Yeah, 100%. I think what you said, talking about patching, I think this is actually a day zero vulnerability. So, yeah, exactly what you said. Yeah, it's a supply chain. They sent out an automatic update using a day zero vulnerability. I'm just looking at it here. So yeah,
but they had to get in, right? So,
yes.
so they had to get in. So they've defeated defenses to get in, and whether it is a day zero or not, you would expect for managed security type organizations to maybe do a little bit more than bigger organizations where security isn't their thing, where security isn't their business, So I think we obviously hear a lot about day zero, and day zero have been about for years, as Christine says, for years. We go back to SQL Slammer and all that type of stuff.
Yes.
in the early 2000s, so it's nothing new. Yet we in security are still kind of banging rocks together, right? We haven't got to a point where some people describe it as an arms race, but it's almost like, and you touched on it, Ayesha, with end user awareness. So it's almost like when you're a child and you're being taught to cross the road, you've got your parents with you. They're holding your hand. They're teaching you to look both ways, wave, and all of that stuff. So it's almost like that's where the awareness comes. But there comes a time where there comes an age where you do it on your own, and you're trusted to do it on your own, and you've grown up and you know how to do that. Becomes common knowledge. That's how we need to approach user awareness. It needs to be common knowledge. It needs to be secondary to people, but we're not going to do it by shouting at them from an ivory tower, and we're definitely not going to get people on board when other security vendors are having this type of attack being successful with them, and then and then the next security vendor happens, and then the next security vendor happens, because it just erodes trust. You know, if your parent teaching you to cross the road would say, right, you can cross out now when this car's coming, or take a chance, that's eroding trust in that process. So we need to get a little bit better with building that, and we also need to get a little bit better ourselves in putting a better foot forward to the market, instead of rushing out to get the latest, greatest release that kills 99.9% of all germs dead, and still get done by that 0.01%.
I'm totally with you. I also would say it was not a new hole like it was a cross-site scripting topic, I think. And I saw that one of the CVEs were from the beginning of April. So now we have July. This is 3 months. And that's what you say, Ayesha, it's like patching. If I get a CVE to some of my software parts, I should have a look at it and prove it and see how many systems do I have? Have I these versions? Have I these holes? Are they exposed into the internet? So make an own risk assessment for my own things I have in the company. And we have to be more, go deeper into that. And the tech people can do this. They have the knowledge. I know that. And I always encourage them to prove more, to go deep into it and make a real clear risk assessment for themselves, and then make a plan when can I go to patch this and inform my surroundings to get the systems down, or get the time frame where I can roll out the patch and test the patch before. So I think also we should go more deeper into this stuff from the technical people. This is really important. They are the key to talk about and say, oh, we have some risk here. Please let us do it quickly, and don't wait months to bring out the patch.
Yeah, certainly. I think there's a great point in looking at third-party suppliers as well. So, you know, we're bringing a lot of these systems and softwares on board, or these MSPs or MSSPs. And I think a lot of companies are, you know, relying on them to know what they're doing, but we need to empower them to understand, yes, they are secure, or have a process in place to say, we can verify that, yes, all their firewalls are, you know, up to date, or all their systems are patched, and, you know, regular communication there. I really do feel like there's, you know, it's a big struggle on the process and communication. There's massive disjoints between MSPs and the clients they have. You know, it's just the product for a lot of them, and I think that there definitely needs to be better interaction there.
And you're right, Elgin talks about it in the comments around how supply chains are complex and how they've grown up, and then kind of Smart jumps on to talk about that around how the tech system, that ecosystem, grows, and no two things kind of fit the same. They're both really valid points, and kind of in my experience, I try and liken it to normal life. You know, we have to communicate. You mentioned it there, Ayesha. We have to communicate with each other, and this comes on to a point that Jan has raised, is that vendors are shouting, buy our tech, it will solve your problems. This does our industry no good whatsoever, because actually people will lurch from one tech to another thinking it will do that. But what we need is vendors talking to each other to try and solve the problem end to end, not to turn around and say ours is the best AI military grade 100% unhackable bullshit in the world, because all of that is market nonsense, right? And we have to start talking to people normally, trying to address their risks, trying to look at what their threats are. And it is true that ecosystems have grown up and have evolved and have got more complex. But at the very heart of it, you will find that the issues to get into those ecosystems are normally poor passwords, misconfigurations, patches not being applied. Normal people, and Jan makes this point as well, normal people not being aware of the attack vectors. And I don't think normal people should be aware. We're all normal, right? Well, I'm slightly abnormal, but I'll admit to that. But normal people shouldn't really know too much about this attack, but what they should understand are the methods of how these attacks come in, because we should be raising people's cyber savvy. Going back to the analogy of crossing the road, you don't let your kids run out into the road when they can just toddle. You teach them. So we have to slowly build that cyber savvy up and start changing behaviours, and that has to be a concerted effort.
Yeah. There's definitely a behavioural change that needs to come within this sort of ecosystem in companies and organisations. It doesn't matter how big or small they are. It needs to be from day one, once you join the company. I mean, even if you're not in a company, I think cybersecurity affects us all these days, being on social media, emails, etc. I think it's very prominent in this day and age now.
Yes, and the bad guys, they earn so many money with that stuff. That's really hard. So it's not like not important or a little small thing. It's like a big business there. So that's the different. If I see the years back, it wasn't
Christine.
that dimension. It wasn't that dimension. $70 million ransom is extraordinary raising.
It's a good day's work, right?
Yes, but
it's a good day's work, and somebody's and you raise a really great point. There's an ecosystem here. There's an economy here for criminals, as there's always been an economy in our day-to-day lives for criminals. So why are we that surprised that they're taking it to the next level, to the ethereal plane, and moving it into the online world?
Yes, and also for me, it's like the worthiness on the other side, on our businesses side, our company's side. I think many company leaders are even aware about how worthy their company is. Just if they get the ransom, then they pay millions of dollars, but the worthiness of your own topics, your business products, your stuff you're doing, the intelligence which is in there, we have to protect that more. That's what I always say, and I always say it's like the fireworkers. They train it, they be prepared, and so this is what companies should do. They should be prepared themselves more, raise the level more to protect their worths, their values they have within their businesses. And when I think as a private person, you close your door to your apartment, to your house. You don't let it open widely so anybody can enter. No, you have a doorbell, the people ring, and you decide this one comes in, the other one I don't let in. So this is what from the private perspective, this is really important to regulate my door. Who am I letting in? Also in the virtual world, social media or wherever, whom I let see what from my private perspectives. This is what we decide. And it's like, if we have the door, it's closed. There's a bell, and I let in whom I like, and who not, I don't let in. So maybe we should go more that direction, so that people get a clearer picture of what have I to protect? Where are my values? What is worthy to invest in protection?
Yeah, I feel like we need to be more proactive rather than reactive. I see this day in and day out. And I mean, another thing that I'm constantly seeing and trying to avoid, or a lot of companies, they don't work on their internal processes, and they're like, no, we must sell, or, work on whatever their product is. And I understand, the company needs to make a profit, but if we don't work on our internal processes, then we have very weak foundations going forward. And if you want to scale up, then at that point they start bringing in all these new security software solutions. So they have maybe 100 different security solutions. They don't know what they do, but it sounds really amazing and cool. and they don't configure it properly, and you still end up getting attacked. So there really needs to be a revisit to that, and people need to actually sit down, build a clear security program, understand their internal processes, have knowledge documents, have it really strong so they can be confident as much as they can to say, yes, if we do get an attack, which is quite reasonable that everyone would get attacked, that they can at least come back from it stronger or better.
Yes, very good point.
I think that point about coming back from it, bouncing back, I think it's okay. From what you see, and you'll see loads of statistics that security companies pump out for you to buy their nonsense, right? Is that I keep saying that I'm in the security industry. I have to keep reminding myself that I'm in that industry, that I'm dissing. But so they'll pump those numbers out in order to get you to come in and buy from them. But actually, how many of them are eating their own cooking? How many of them are actually living by those things they're saying to the market? And it comes back to that trust that I mentioned earlier on. When it gets eroded, when a security provider is attacked, that should be a wake-up call for all security providers to start turning their eyes inward and look into their processes and their procedures. But when it's the bigger company, they can survive it. When it's a smaller company, a lot of those people don't have the resources or the time or the effort to suffer a dip in stock or a dip in sales or a dip in confidence, whereas the bigger ones can ride that wave out. And I think sometimes that apathy or that arrogance amongst those bigger security companies leaves the door open even further, because that pervades all the way down.
Yeah. I would like one sentence I reminded when you talked, Alicia. I had a former boss. He was a really great security guy, and he always said, a fool with a tool is still a fool. And even in security, you must have a clear, like you said, plan, processes, idea how can I protect the stuff I have. It's not the tool, it's the people, organization and processes, and yes, it's also the technical stuff, but a well-selected technical components that you combine and make your layers of security. That's what I learned within my practical experience, and I love that. And I always think we should be more think over what is really the goal we want to achieve within a company from the company perspective, and then do useful things and not throw money on it or marketing stuff or PowerPoint. Everything works on PowerPoint, by the way. It's not, but it doesn't help if we get the attack. No, it doesn't help us out.
I think with this attack, it shows that you don't have to. There's different size companies that got attacked essentially, and I think it's not one size fits all. And a lot of the security vendors out there try and fit a model which doesn't really work for them, and they don't work hand in hand to say like, okay, well, because you're this size of company, you need a bit more one-to-one training with your organization, or we need to classify these in a secure area, or it could be a multitude of things. But I think it is about understanding the client's needs, really.
Yes.
Which is very rare.
Yes.
So I was just going to say, and I've been in plenty of sales meetings on both sides. I've done direct sales and pre-sales and stuff like that, and the majority of salespeople I've worked with generally are on transmit mode all the time, So, and even when the customer's telling them something, they're thinking of the response in their mind instead of listening to what the customer's saying.
It's about what can we sell to make the most profit and things like that. When let's install this security agent, or let's have this military grade encryption.
Yes. But from the customer's perspective, you have really to challenge these providers and tell them this is not useful what you're doing. I think maybe we should also give more feedback to the providers to tell them it's nonsense. It doesn't work within our daily life. Yeah? I don't know the real solution for this. It's difficult.
I think it's a combination of different solutions.
Yes.
We need a custom fit. We need to really take the time to work out the processes, understand the business, understand the people, understand their behavioral attitudes. How do they, are they the type of people who leave their laptops open or, send unencrypted emails or, is it okay for them to send unencrypted emails? It's about just understanding that whole process. I think a lot of people come in, go out of, and then they bring different solutions, so people get confused. And I think there isn't consistency. I've seen that a lot. So
yes,
it's about building strong foundations within security to say that this is how it is. This is what you do.
Yes. And the administrators also should have the time to learn the new tools, to go deep into configuration stuff so that they can do the configuration of the technical components really good and really helpful. So because you said earlier, if the configuration is not done well, the tool doesn't help, the software doesn't help, or the appliance to protect me. So.
We've got some questions here. So Carl has said, he'd be interested in the panel's top 3 tips for businesses to counter ransomware. It must be rather disheartening for defenders of businesses who trust their security to others. And then he's given his. His first one is do the basics well, patching, vulnerability analysis, tests prior to release and similar.
Top.
2, have a workable and practiced incident response plan for when needed, and 3, have layered defenses, both technical controls and education. There is no silver bullet. So
yeah, I think the number one, I would all agree with number one, do the basics well. Using the term basic is a bit of a misnomer though, right? Because it's anything but basic to do it. When we're speaking about the complexity of networks and who you're interacting with and the lack of comms and things like that, if the basics were easy, everybody would be doing it, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. But because you got older networks, different operating systems, different patching levels, different people, the person who wrote that code is no longer with the business, and nobody knows whether you update it, whether it'll break the system that your business depends upon. So there's lots of different reasons why it's not easy. But I certainly agree with Carl that that's the top thing. Also, probably in that what he meant to say as well is to have a verified backup that's tested, that you can actually use. That's depending on the size and the risk and the threat, that's off-site somewhere as well. So you can actually turn to that should the ransomware hit, and other options. So that would be my big top one, really, the basics. Everything else falls out of it.
Ayesha, do you have a top 3 tips for businesses to counter ransomware?
Yeah, no, definitely agree with what everyone said, but I think I'll add some new ones into the mix. So I would say enforcing strong passwords is a must. No password 1, 2, 3, 4 has any business in anyone's organization. It's a must to build a password policy that enforces this across the organization. I would say check your backups, make sure you have working backups. I think that's really important in this case with ransomware. And I think for me also secure privilege accounts immediately, and that could be enabling MFA, ensuring that privilege accounts are separate from standard user accounts. I would say those are the top 3 that haven't been said.
Yes. I can make one addition. In the case of ransomware, I think you should also, addition to your crisis processing, some lawyers, because if you get in the need, do I pay the ransom or not? You need the lawyer's perspective. What are the consequences? Do you have an insurance that protects the company? Depends on the size of the company, but I think also this should be a must to decide quickly, do we pay or do we not pay? This is kind of an organizational stuff to do, and also to have really good crisis organization so that you can get quick into the mode to decide the main topics. And I agree totally with all backups, all the things you said, Ayesha and Ian. These are the main topics. There's no more addition, just from this also CIO, CEO perspective. Involve your lawyer, think over how's your insurance to protect your company, and see that you can organize it very quickly in case if you decide you have to pay, you pay or you don't pay.
Sorry, that was my dog giving his opinion in the background, by the way, in case you hear
perfect.
the bark. He was agreeing with you, Christine. He went, yes, I
thank
agree,
you.
and then just ran off.
Thank you very much.
I think to add to that, it's not just about involving lawyers or anything like that. I think all key stakeholders should be involved. So you need a really good crisis response team there. And everyone needs to know what's happening. There needs to be complete transparency and visibility. There needs to be that clear procedure. So yeah, that incident response procedure is key.
Yes.
That business continuity plan is very key to the survival of anyone's organization.
But also protected from informations going out. I had one big case of a big threat, and some of the stuff went out to the press, and they announced it in the newspaper, unauthorized. So you also have to create a safe space where the crisis team can work, like encrypted telephone calls or such things. No? To do this protected space where people can decide the things. You don't want to read yourself what you're doing internal in the press in the next morning. It's not so nice for the image of the company. So, but I think we had all topics now surrounded.
I think that raises another interesting point, Christine, is what's the initial reaction from the company once it happens? Yes, there's the crisis side of things, and there's the technical bits in the background of how you recover from it, finding out, but also as well, I think you need good PR or good comms to the wider public. You know, you need to hold your hands up. You need to turn around and say you're in the middle of something. Can you give us some time? We're going to work with you. We're going to keep you informed. We're going to keep you up to date, and not jump to, because I think early on in the Kaseya thing, I think the CEO came out and said, "Hey, it's only a couple of hundred people, a couple of hundred organisations, or in the tens, or whatever. I can't remember." And then it was 1,500, and then it. So I think what you need there is leaders to be leaders and lead by example. And be honest with the people and turn around and say, hey, it's a difficult time. We're right in the middle of it. We're up to our elbows. Give us time. We will keep you informed.
Correctly. But I meant don't throw out your internal discussions and finding your path out there. So because that was the threat on that time. It was 2013. So I think people are more aware of it. But this is really important that you have the guidance through the communication outside and also inside to your own people correctly, definitely.
Okay, so we're sort of coming to time. We'll take, I think, this last question. So Jared has said that he's in Australia and there's talks of legislation for mandatory reporting of ransomware incidents. It's beginning to warm up. Historically, a lot of cybersecurity incidents, and he assumes occurrences of ransomware, have flown under the radar. Perhaps that's about to change. He's wondering what some of your thoughts are and whether similar conversations are occurring in the UK at the moment.
I mean, it's like the data privacy conversation, isn't it? About informing here in the UK, the Information Commissioner's Office of a data breach and things like that. I think there's a what's the term? What's the legal term? Is it disclosure or I can't remember the legal term for it. It was something disclosure, and I do think that if the firms are or if the industries are within the public interest. I think there's maybe a need to do that, especially if private and personal information is included. I'm not sure how you police it or how you get everyone to do it. We've had to make legislation for data privacy. So if you make it guidance, people are going to ignore it. The only way you get anything done in any industry is when disasters happen, unfortunately. Piper Alpha changed the health and safety industry. Hillsborough changed the football industry. So it's only when disasters happen that people sit up and take notice. So I'd like to think that wasn't the case for ransomware, because you can think of Bond scenarios in the back of your mind where a disaster could happen because of it, and patients on life support systems that are locked out via ransomware, and this, that, and the other. So I'd like to think would change our stripes here, but I don't think so. I think it won't be until something massive and major happens before that type of legislation is brought in. But we've already got data privacy there, so if it has personal data, that's already covered.
I think with the GDPR and PII information, I think reporting to the ICO, I found it isn't very intuitive. They're filling in that form when there has been a data breach. I think there needs to be more. It needs to be broadcasted a bit more. It needs to be understood better. I think smaller organizations get stuck with this. There needs to be a little bit more hand-holding, unfortunately, at this stage. There needs to be more definition around a breach. I think that can be a little bit difficult for smaller organizations to understand, and then they end up paying a lot of money to cybersecurity companies to come in and explain that when they probably could have done it themselves. So there needs to be a rehaul of this legislation and the way people report breaches, and to make it a thing where if you do report a breach, it's a good thing. It's a really good thing. You're helping, you're providing intelligence for the nation, essentially, and everyone else, and all other organizations out there, rather than, oh, your security software, or you had a breach, why have you not been diligent in that? I think there needs to be a balance between punishment versus, actually you have done a good thing by reporting this.
Yes, I also think in Europe, or especially in Germany, there's a duty to announce it if you are one of the part of the critical infrastructure. So water, gas, transport, health system. If these things are affected, it's important for the people to know also, I think. So the announcement there is, for me, mandatory, and I think they do it also from the law perspective. They have a law where companies must report such things, but you have a lot of communities where it's useful. I heard several speeches from CIOs or CEOs there when the company was affected. So they tell their own perspective from the inside, and that they have underestimated the risk, that they how they dealt with, where the topics were, what they learned out of, so other companies can learn from their experiences. I found this quite good from a learning perspective. And if one CEO is telling another CEO, so he says, "Oh, I should think over that. What would happen if this happened to our company?" So it's really, really important to report these things and go out and learn from it, not to accuse or something. That's not useful, because when it's done, it's done. You just can learn from it. No, you can't change the past, so only the future. That's the way to go.
I think it can be quite confusing with depending what industry you're in, and if you have had a cyber attack within your organization, so then there's a lot of places you have to report things to. So if you're working for a financial institution, or if you are working for a critical national infrastructure, I think there's so many different regulations or boards you have to report to. It needs to maybe be narrowed down and streamlined, essentially, to make it easier. I do understand it needs to be, these incidents need to be reported, but if there was a way we could filter this out or report it to a single organization, and then that gets filtered out, I think that would work a lot better and be a lot faster.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for everyone joining. I think we're just going to wrap it up now. Thanks again for Christine, Ayesha, and Ian for joining us on this webinar. We'll see. Thanks again. Basically, yeah. We'll see you in the next one. Thank you everyone in the chat for your questions, and have a nice day.
Yes, have a good day. Thank you all.
So,
it was a pleasure to be with you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.